course, why churn matters, why you should pay attention to churn in your business, the different types of churn. So churn is not sort of one overarching thing. There's actually two main categories of churn. We'll talk about those today. We'll also talk about the impact of churn on the customer lifecycle and customer journey. We'll give you a couple of retention frameworks that you can use that are quite handy in reducing churn by 5 to 10% at least on average, and then some actionable tactics and takeaways. Probably need to explain to this audience what churn is, but churn, or some people use the term attrition, is where customers sign up or subscribe or enroll in your membership and then leave or cancel during the customer life cycle on their own accord. So it's not the company canceling, it's them canceling. The impact on retention is huge. Okay, we see this all the time where companies actually overinvest in the acquisition side of the business and underinvest in the retention side. But with any subscription, SaaS, or membership model, the battle is won on the retention side. It costs way more money to acquire a customer than it does to retain one. So you got to focus on retention. In fact, you got to focus on retention more than on the acquisition side. So as promised, there's two types of churn here. Voluntary is where a customer signs up to a subscription or membership, and then during the life cycle, they voluntarily cancel their subscription. And this is because they're dissatisfied, you've not met expectations, the product or service is not up to snuff, or you don't have a proper customer service department or whatever. But involuntary churn is a major contributor to a company's overall churn rate. And this happens when a lot of subscribers or members actually don't know that they're no longer active or no longer a part of their membership or subscription because their payment has failed. There's been a card decline. Now, this is a problem because when companies report on churn, they say, oh, we've got a 5% monthly churn rate or 25% annualized churn rate. They don't say, X percent of that churn rate is a result of dissatisfied customers and X percent of the churn is a result of payment failures. They don't explain that. They just lump it all into one bucket. But we know these are two different sides of the same coin, and they've got to be examined very carefully because it's a different problem. These are the average card decline rates across a basket of companies from 2023 and 2024. So we know this is a major deal. We have some tactics on the voluntary churn side, which relate to improving customer service, ensuring the billing practices are and controls are sound and up to date, strengthening our value proposition, making sure effectively that we're satisfying the customer, right? That's on the voluntary churn side. On the involuntary churn side, we're actually talking about paying attention to the payment side of the business, right? Ensuring that our credit card updater tools are sound, that we're retrying failed transactions. So if a credit card is declining, that we're retrying that card on average at least 5 times, if not 7 times over the course of that next 30 to 60 days to make sure that we can capture that card. So reattempting those cards, notifying customers when their payments fail. You've probably seen this where you get an email and said, oh, your payment declined. That's an example of dunning. Offering alternative payment methods like PayPal, like Apple Pay. These can all help to reduce involuntary churn. One very important concept to understand when we're talking about churn or attrition, if you prefer, is that it's not a linear number. It's not a linear pattern. So if you Google, the average churn rate of a B2B SaaS company, you'll get an answer of like 5% or 2%. These are sort of just general averages across a calendar year as it relates to the business. The fact is, churn is accelerated, meaning that you have your highest amount of churn activity happening earlier on in the customer lifecycle. That is to say that churn, the bulk of churn or churn risk happens between day 1 and day 30. Day 1 and day 60, or day 1 and day 90, if you prefer to look at your business on a quarterly basis. And as you move out to the right, the customer becomes less of a churn risk, right? The probability of them churning declines, or the probability of them becoming like a loyal subscriber, remember, increases the longer they stay with you. So your highest risk of a customer churning happens early on, okay, is the main thing to understand here. So when you are planning for your retention strategies or how you're operationally going to tackle churn, you're going to want to focus early on in the life cycle. What are you doing day 1 through day 30, right? What are you doing between day 30 and day 60? We want to break it up into 3 different phases. We look at this on the left as the copy that's in red, in fact, is where your highest risk of churn is happening. The copy that's in blue is phase 2. That is sort of mid-grade risk. And then the copy and the bullets that are in black are, the lowest risk of churn. However, the reasons why a client or customer is churning is outlined here. So early on, the customer or client cancels because there's been a lack of quality, or the value proposition is weak. There's an expectation shortfall. They're not satisfied. The onboarding is too complex for the company or client to understand, or the customer to understand. There's not enough communication happening early, right? We've got to communicate early and often. Poor communication leads to churn. There's been a lack of training or education or content, right? If it's a tool that you're selling, if they're subscribing to a software tool, you've got to make sure you train that client on how to use the tool. And there's some psychology at play, right? Because like I said, there's a new relationship between company and client. And so buyer's remorse tends to creep in early if there's going to be buyer's remorse, because the client or customer has a lack of confidence, right? They've just signed up for something. They want to make sure that they've made the right decision. So it's our responsibility as a company to ensure that we reaffirm that confidence, right? That we engage with that customer so that they know that they've made the right choice when they've come to us. Now, phase 2, when customers are churning, that's because there's been a poor level of customer service or support. We've got billing and payment issues, right? We're billing the wrong amounts. There's been a billing error. There's a billing descriptor error of some kind, meaning the name that appears on the card statement is inaccurate. That accounts for a huge percentage of churn. That little fix can make a big difference. You've got contract lock-ins, right, that are too restrictive. You have product or service reliability issues. These are all reasons where companies or clients churn in phase 2. In phase 3, companies are looking at the ROI. Companies drop off the map, right, in terms of communication at this point. They stop communicating because they feel like, the customer has been around for a long time. We don't need to reach out. We don't need to communicate with that client anymore. If they're a good client, no, we got to keep communicating. So ongoing communication, very important. Poor relationship management, that's also an issue. Or no evolution or innovation related to product or service. Okay, so different phases, different reasons why churn happens. Now, this slide, we're talking about the solutions here, right? So the solutions to those issues by phase. Like, what do we do if we know we've got a diagnosis? We know we've got these issues happening in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. For example, we've got to have seamless, frictionless onboarding, right? Onboarding can be so annoying for companies, can be so annoying for consumers. Make it easy. Have it be frictionless. Make sure we overly communicate, right? Double down on customer service. Where companies are taking away from customer service, we're advocating for actually doubling down on customer service, making it easy for clients or customers to reach out to you if they have questions. Oftentimes, clients or customers will cancel because they can't reach anybody, right? They see this sort of like support at email. That email goes into a black hole, doesn't get responded to for 24 to 48 hours. No one knows where those emails go. There's no live chat. There's no toll-free number. So the customer says, the hell with it, I'm going to cancel. I can't reach anyone. So double down on customer service. Quantify that ROI, right? On the right-hand side, if it's an annualized software contract with a big client, be able to quantify that value and say, we've been providing this software to this company for this long. Here are the results. Here are the outcomes. Here's why you should stay with us.